Hello everyone and welcome to Guild Wars 2 Daily. Today we're going to be talking about mechanics stuff. It's just going to be a normal mechanics thing. I do want to start doing news, but I don't know what it is. I've just got to get off my arse and actually start looking for news. I'm not really sure how much worthy news there is for Guild Wars 2 at the moment, but I am still looking into that. But anyway, yeah, I've got about 4 questions for mechanics at the moment. The footage in the background comes from someone called Nemhorser. So thanks very much to that. It will just be a random assortment of stuff that was on their channel. And yeah, I guess we should get started. I'm going to have to try and keep this episode down in length because YouTube seems to be acting really weird with my channel right now, where it's given me a limit on how long my videos can be. So that's the reason why Winds of Change hasn't been out yet today, guys, but I am working on it. Anyway, right, yeah, so the first question was from Burly Machine, who said, my only issue with the game after getting to about level 15 on a Norn warrior was that you've got the limited skills. When you equip your two-handed mace or your two-handed sword, you get 5 skills. You unlock them within an easy hour of gameplay. Well, I found myself getting quite bored with my weapons in no time. I loved the mace effects and the sword effect abilities, so I favoured them and wanted to use them a lot. But in return, the new wore off quickly. How do you feel about the weapon skill varieties? I felt I desired more. This has been like the age-old question with Guild Wars 2. When they first announced the Elementalist and talked about how this system was going to work, there have always been people that were worried they wouldn't like the effects that had on gameplay. And in particular, there was one guy I was talking to after the beta weekend, and his impressions as he left it were very much the same as yours. It was that really, a big part of playing MMOs that he enjoys is unlocking a wide variety of skills and being able to use a wide variety of skills all the time. And this new system, people feel like it's restricting them. I can't say personally I came away with that thought, because a lot of the skills on the left-hand side had enough nuances to them or enough little tricks to them that I found they remained fun for a long time. I could play with them in all kinds of different ways and figure out what good combinations were. And then particularly when you get to the right-hand side of the skill bar, that newness that you still kind of want, that continues right the way up to level 30 when you're just still unlocking more and more slots. And there is quite a lot of choice for that side of your skill bar. You've got quite a lot of options for your utility skills. I did find that healing skills weren't very interesting. I just stuck with my default healing skill a lot of the time. It didn't seem like the variety there was particularly fun. But especially with elite skills as well, deciding which elite you want to use, they don't even, I would argue, need to have that many elite skills in the game for that to remain an interesting decision, because all the elite skills are just so distinct from one another. So it's not something that I can say that I felt that much, but it is something a lot of people have been worried about and have been putting off with Guild Wars 2. And I still kind of have the same argument that I had even before I'd played the game. With most people that were complaining about the new system were people coming from Guild Wars 1, which had an 8 skill restriction, right? Guild Wars 2's got 10, which immediately does free you up a bit more, but a lot of people were complaining that there's not going to be so much choice there. And I still kind of have the same argument with regards to that even though you might, in other games, continue unlocking lots of skills like you seem to desire here, really, how many of those would you use? In particular, in Guild Wars 1, most of those skills weren't viable. There were certain combinations that were, and most of the time you'd just be stuck with the same 8 a lot of the time. There were differences you could make, but a lot of things weren't viable. Even though there were these millions and millions of combinations and all this customization, it wasn't something that you would really ever take advantage of. The difference with Guild Wars 2 is actually the amount of viable combinations that are now in the game. Even though the total choice for skills might be slightly lower, the viable combinations has gone way up. So you should have more freedom, and I certainly felt that. I was very much, once I'd unlocked all of the skills on my weapons, I felt way more compelled to experiment and try different things than I ever did in Guild Wars 1, or for that matter, a lot of other games as well. So really for me, it just became a situation of unlock all of the skills on the weapon, and then the more I played with it, it didn't start to feel that old, because a lot of the skills were interacting with each other in unique ways. And as I unlocked those extra utility slots, a lot of the times those utility skills would affect my first 5 as well. Frenzy in particular, I've talked about in Guild Wars 2 Daily already. It was so much fun to have that utility skill there, or, you know, if you're an Elementalist, certain signets, and then to be able to go back to your left 5 skills and watch how that utilities affected things. How does the hammer feel when you're attacking so much faster? How do axes feel when you're attacking so much faster? How does your rifle feel? And then you use skill 3, which is like a barrage on your rifle. If you've got Frenzy up while you're using that, it's incredibly fun, because like 10 bullets will come out of the rifle in an instant and just strike someone straight away. And there were all these interesting combinations all over the place in the combat system that I had a lot of fun fiddling around with. So I mean, in some ways you can look at this new feeling of being lost, but I think that the game is making up for that extra things to work towards from leveling up in other areas, particularly at least up until level 30. You're still looking forward to getting your elite skill and finishing your entire skill bar. From that point, there is a question of what are you working on from there. Hopefully the trait system can pick up from that, but I am curious as to see whether after level 30, how impactful the leveling up rewards are going to feel. I mean, leveling up is obviously a primary motivation in most MMOs. Hopefully the personal story is going to be the main motivation for most people to continue playing. That is, unless they're playing for PvP or World versus World, that is. So if they don't want that though, what is their motivation for leveling up and exploring more of the world? Well, hopefully you feel like you are unlocking new things and getting new stuff as you go along after that level 30 mark. But I think certainly during what we saw in beta and what I saw in beta, I wasn't feeling this. I wasn't feeling like the weapons were getting too boring. Maybe it's a question of how difficult the combat is. If it was too easy in most places, which is what I would agree with, that it was too easy most of the time, then maybe that's going to have an impact on how boring you find the weapons, because you're less likely to be forcing yourself to find these little interesting ways you can get more damage out or do unique and cool things. So perhaps that comes into it, but I wouldn't say the weapons themselves right now are too bad. In fact, I thought that they were quite fun in how distinct they all felt from one another as well, which was something I was curious about before going into the beta. That actually worked out quite well in the end. The next question is two quick questions from Lyrical Genius Muso, who asked, 1, will we be able to draw on the map like it was possible in Guild Wars 1? And 2, when we download the original digital version of this game, would it be possible to then install it on another computer? The first one, yes, you can draw on the map. You can actually do a hell of a lot on the map. If a lot of people, I guess, realise you could draw on it just like in Guild Wars 1, so everyone in your party will be able to see directions you put on the map. But also, if you were to right-click and drag around, you could actually move the map wherever you wanted. You could scroll in and out of your mini-map, you could lay waypoints on it, all from there. So I actually had a pretty cool experience in the beta where for a while I just kept pressing M and bringing up the big map and then looking at all of the locations and then getting rid of the big map and then moving around. But after a while I realised, hey, you can do all of this on the little mini-map in the corner, and it was actually a lot more fluid as far as the gameplay is concerned, in that I could just scroll down to the bottom right-hand corner of my screen and just fiddle around with that whenever I wanted. There's actually quite a lot of utility on that mini-map, and I think it'd be a shame if a lot of people didn't notice it. It does have these cool things. It's still got pings, then you can still ping on it, do all kinds of stuff, which is very cool, and I'm happy to see, because actually a feature you see in Guild Wars 1 in particular, I used to use it all the time, would be like a mini map you could bring up onto the screen that was like just a smaller version of the large map, and that's not actually there in Guild Wars 2, and it's quite obvious it's because of the mini map now. You can do so much on that, you just don't need to be fiddling around with any other windows, which is quite cool. So I did want to bring attention to that. As to your other question, yes, you can install it on other computers. The only time there's going to be an issue is if you're going, say, from Europe to America, then you may have to figure things out. ArenaNet still haven't come out with their answer to their players who travel a lot, by the way, as far as that sort of locking down goes that we discussed before. I'll be sure to tell you guys if anything comes up on that. So the next question was asked by Robot Adventures, who said, I think an important question is how relevant the Hall of Monuments is to Guild Wars 2. If it's just a skin, then it doesn't seem that important, unless you're into skins. If it's just status, then not so good. If you can easily cap a juvenile Black Widow spider, then why go to 30 points? Well, this is an interesting point, because really, I think this comes down to personal preference. It is about skins, okay? And what you say here, unless you're into skins, if you are not into skins, really, I would not recommend you do the Hall of Monuments stuff. What this is going to give you is unique skins and a unique appearance for certain things in the game. It's not going to try and give you a statistical bonus anywhere, and you're not going to have anything tangible over other players, in the interests of keeping it balanced and fair, both in PvP and in PvE. They wouldn't want a situation where only Guild Wars 1 players are getting into certain dungeons because they get a certain item other people don't. If you're going to go for the Hall of Monuments rewards and decide how important it is, this is something you personally have to decide for yourself. Do you care about the skins? Do you care about the titles that you get from doing that Guild Wars 1 stuff? At the end of the day, the hardest things to get in the Hall of Monuments, it gets exponentially harder and harder to acquire points. That's the way the game's set up. And if you want every single reward, you'll need 50 points. What this means is your first 30 points will come far easier than the last 20. To get to 50 points is significantly more difficult than to get to 30. However, you stop getting items and skins at 30 points, okay? So those last 20 points points only give you titles. They just give you some text that will appear with your name. And if you decide that you don't want to put all that effort in for that aesthetic reward, then don't go for it. And a lot of people have made that decision just to go to 30 points in the Hall of Monuments. I don't think ArenaNet owes us anything more than aesthetic bonuses, and I see a lot of people complaining about that every now and then, because they'll say, oh, I've worked so hard for these points. Well, the truth is, it's your decision whether you worked for the Guild Wars 1 points, and it's up to you whether you think it will be worth it for Guild Wars 2. One thing I would say in favour of these rewards is that as Guild Wars 2 gets older and older, and possibly Guild Wars 1 even, eventually it will happen, go offline. They've never announced any plans for that at the moment, but it will eventually. When that day comes, then these things will probably be regarded quite highly in the game. So you're kind of playing a bit of a long-term game, if you ask me. The longer you go on, the more rare these things will be, and the more you stand out. But again, it's about EPing. Do you care about that kind of thing? I personally had already put the effort in before the calculator was even announced, so I've got the stuff. But it's a decision you have to make, a personal decision as to whether you think it's worth it. It is aesthetic and nothing more. Just before I end, what you say here about possibly being able to get something that you could also get from 30 points, that's actually not true. All this aesthetic stuff is completely unique. You won't be able to get it any other way in the game. So it will be only getting 30 points will get you that specific pair or that specific bit of gear. So that's the kind of thing we're dealing with here. There's not going to be any way in Guild Wars 2 to acquire these items, and there's not going to be any way to spend real money either to get those items. It's for Guild Wars 1 effort, and it's a reward for the Guild Wars 1 players. So there you go, guys. That's Guild Wars 2 Daily for today, the mechanics episode. Please, if you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments section below. And thanks again to Nemhauser for the footage in the background. I guess I'll see you tomorrow.